Into the Alps, and the Tour enters its final phase, its most important phase. This is the first of 4 mountainous stages where who wears yellow into Paris will be decided. It's the reigning champion Chris Froome who the challengers are trying to dethrone, but so far he's shown no signs of relinquishing his crown. Hello and welcome to stage 17 of the Tour de France, where the action starts in Bern. Stage 17, and it starts in the Swiss capital of Bern, and it makes its way through the Swiss Alps to Fenno-Emerson. It's a 184-kilometre stage. It's got 2 Category 3 climbs early, but at the back end, it's a Category 1 climb followed by the last ascent to the finish line. This is a stage with a mountaintop finish. Again, clear blue skies welcoming the peloton as they get underway after the second and final rest day. 182 riders on the start line. Mark Cavendish not starting, choosing instead to head home, recuperate and prepare for his next big objective for the season, and perhaps his biggest. He's aiming for Olympic Games gold medal on the track in the Omnium at the Games in Rio. When the flag came in to get racing started, it was a very aggressive start. In fact, across the first hour, they covered 51.8 kilometres. That's the fastest we've seen throughout this year's tour. Second fastest was just before the rest day, and that was on the stage where we saw Tony Martin and Julien Alaphilippe right off the front and covered 49.5 kilometres in the first hour. But if you can remember just from moments ago, the course profile for today, it was a tough start, and they averaged almost 52 kilometres per hour. Strong breakaway group up the road. This is Greg van Avermaet amongst the chasers trying to get across. He's got Alexei Lutsenko sitting behind him from Astana, followed then by Thomas Voeckler. .91 kilometres to go, the leaders with an advantage of almost 8 minutes. They've been over 1 climb already, and it's a Category 3 climb, and it was Rafael Majka managing to collect the points, as he is in the leading group along with Peter Sagan in the green jersey. So Rafael Majka once again making it into the breakaway, looking to go one better than he did a few days ago, and that was into Toulouse when he was in second position behind Jalinson Pantano. This is Ilnaz Zakarin at the back of the leading group as we now join them. And Pantano is also in this group for IM Cycling. So too is his teammate Steph Clement. Tony Galopin is the rider in the red colours from Lotto Soudal. Domenico Pozzovivo is there for AG Tour Le Mondial. The tall rider in the black colours of Fortunato Vital Concept, that is Brice Feillu. And this is Rafael Majka, the leader of the King of the Mountains classification, being towed up this climb by the leader of the points classification. They are well ahead of schedule. This is a reasonably long climb at 6.4 kilometres. A little bit longer than that. 6.4 it is. The Col de Moses that they're now making their way up. This is Durasec from Lamprey. Steph Clement knows the roads around here well. He has been a winner of a race here some 10 years ago. This is Jalinson Pantano, who reminded us after his stage victory, which was on stage 15, that there are more Colombian climbers than just Nairo Quintana and Esteban Chavez. Certainly are, and he is one of them. And he has been climbing well. What a race it's been. What a few months it's been for IM Cycling. Since they announced that the team wouldn't be continuing, they've now won 14 or 15 races, including a stage at the Giro d'Italia and a stage here at the Tour de France. Their biggest success is coming in their 3 years of existence, ever since the sponsor said, it's time for us to go. things were just starting to click. But rightly so, from all the riders in that team, they say, yeah, it's disappointing that the team is ending, but we'd like to thank the sponsors for the 3 years that they've given us. Team Sky at the front, controlling the chase, and it is Luke Rowe who is doing the job early, followed then by Ian Stannard. Once again, Chris Froome is surrounded by Fortress Froome. They're like moats and ramparts, making sure that none of the attacks can actually get to the King himself. King Chris reigning supreme in the Tour de France. But now, anyway, and he's looking very good. We haven't seen him put a foot wrong. It was the Church of St. Marie that they're just making their way past, but the peloton, no time to take a look across to their right and enjoy it. Through the town of Ducimé, which is a popular ski resort. It's also very popular for hiking. And the mountains in this region, some of the mountains in this region along the Swiss Alps as we border with France, reach to over 4,000 metres in altitude. The highest point in this section that we're going through today goes up to 4,274 metres. In the next couple of days, we'll go towards Mont Blanc, which is almost at 5,000 metres. The roads don't go over the top of those climbs, which I'm sure the sprinters who remain in the race are very grateful for. Domenico Pozzovivo, making his debut in the Tour de France, has also managed to infiltrate that breakaway. No great threats in terms of riders battling for the yellow jersey to try and challenge Chris Froome. Steph Clement is the best placed rider in 24th position at 36 minutes and 17 seconds down. So Team Sky, they don't need to chase that breakaway group. They just want to make sure things don't get out of control. So 9 minutes now, the advantage for the leading group of 11 riders. Steve Morabito is also up there for FDJ. And when we get onto the final climb today, you'll see more signs for Steve Morabito than any other rider. There he is in the white and blue colours, the white Nicks, just going through the picture. Swiss climbing sensation, Steve Morabito, former teammate of Cadel Evans at BMC, and he played a crucial role in supporting Evans to win the Tour de France in 2011. And now he gets the chance to ride for himself, Morabito. He did get brought across to this team, as he's now in discussions with their sports director, Ivan Matteo, and collecting some food and drinks along the way. He did get brought across to this team to try and play the same role for Thibaut Pinot as what he played for Cadel Evans. But with Thibaut Pinot out of the race due to bronchitis, Morabito has got the green light. Vokla at 45 seconds. The next group further down the road that you can see at 1 minute and 25 seconds, we join them now. This is Ruben Platzer at the back of the group. Julien Alaphilippe is there wearing the red number from Edit Quickstep. Serge Pauls at the front, the white colours for Dimension Data. Rui Costa for Lamprey, the former world champion. And Alberto Lassard is in there for Katusha in the red colours, sitting in second position. And Ruben Platzer doing exactly what he did at the Giro d'Italia this year when he was riding in support of Esteban Chavez. On the final few mountain stages, he got himself in the early break, so he'd be alongside Chavez when it counted at the end of the stage. Today, he's doing that to look after Adam Yates. Well, this is interesting. Maybe Ruben Platzer doesn't have the legs to be able to play that role. He's losing contact with this group, and the old legs of the Spaniard starting to fade. Just drifting out the back. He's an incredibly strong climber for such a big man, Ruben Platzer. 191 centimetres, 76 kilograms. Much bigger than most of the men that we see at the front. Take Domenico Pozzovivo, for example, who just swings off from doing his turn of pace. A little over 156 centimetres tall. One of the shortest riders in the peloton. 5 kilometres to the top of the climb. Pantano is now forcing the tempo, along with Morabito. Very similar breakaway to what we saw on stage 17. Maika, Pantano, and Zakharin were the 3 strongest riders that day, and they're in this breakaway. Pozzovivo was also in the winning breakaway on that stage. Stage 15 that was, into Toulouse. Stage 17 today. The snow-capped mountains of the Swiss Alps. Managed to get himself into the breakaway, Steve Morabito, and it is a strong leading group of 11 riders. Domenico Pozzovivo has returned. Tenel Kangert sitting at the back for the Astana team, and these three, Lutsenko, Van Avermaet and Voeckler, trying to bridge across. They're at 30 seconds, 1 kilometre to the top, as the green jersey wearers at the front of the peloton. And I'm joined by a man who's won that jersey 3 times, Robbie McEwen, the green jersey at the front. Peter Sagan, he's bringing a whole new meaning to the points classification. He is Mr. Everything.
He certainly is, and it's never a surprise anymore to see him in a breakaway in the mountains because he's done it so often over the last couple of years. It may not be a surprise, but it's always impressive.
Thomas Voeckler, they want to bridge this gap or get near enough by the time they get to the top so they can join them on the descent.
They've been wanting to bridge that gap from the moment they took off about 70 kilometres ago and haven't been able to do it, and just shows you how hard the riders in front are prepared to work because they think we've got enough guys up here, we don't need any more competition. And a big part of the driving force has been Peter Sagan. He's led all the way up the climbs for Rafał Majka, and if Voeckler and Van Avermaet don't get on over the top, they're going to have a lot of trouble getting on at all because Peter Sagan is sure to lead the descent as well, and we know what he's like downhill.
How many people can say, I caught Peter Sagan on a descent?
I'm not sure anyone's been able to say it yet.
That's what I thought. And you can see the Astana rider at the back here. This is Tenel Kangert. He's got a teammate chasing, which is Lutsenko. So he's not contributing to the pacemaking at this point. He's waiting for his teammate to come across. But they're out in front because they have a plan for later on in the hope that Fabio Aru can make an impact. He's currently in 10th position, and he said he's not happy with the situation.
Well, I'm not sure the teammates are going to be able to do much from there with a 10-minute lead, so that pretty much nullifies Astana having 2 riders in front, because by the time Aru gets to these guys, if he does, they'll be going up a 10% plus gradient climb as Rafał Majka takes the points. Adds to his total, and I think Thomas de Gendt can wave goodbye.
Thomas de Gendt suggests by not getting in the breakaway, he might have tried, as we see Voeckler sprinting, not for the points because there's no points on offer. He's sprinting, as you mentioned before, to get in contact before they start going downhill. And it's a long descent followed by a long valley road. And a little bit of an arm sling, practicing perhaps to ride the Madison at future World Championships. Van Avermaet of this group is going to be crucial on the way down.
He will be, and the body language of Van Avermaet, he looks like he's really on the limit. Got the shoulders rocking all over the place. This is Alaphilippe, Serge Pauls. And just sitting on the back of those two is Alberto Losada from the Katusha team. These three, they are chasing behind Van Avermaet, Voeckler and Lutsenko, and they have even less chance of getting on to that Peter Sagan-led group.
When there was a stage of the Tour de Avenir to this finish line in 2006, it was an individual time trial. Steph Clement, who's in the breakaway, he won the stage. The only other rider from the top 10 that day that is in the race is Serge Pauls, who's in this break trying to go across. So they've obviously got good memories of the area. Almost over the top, Julien Alaphilippe wearing the red number today after that big adventure off the front with Tony Martin. How impressed have you been with Julien Alaphilippe?
Well, he just doesn't have an off button, does he? All day yesterday with Tony Martin in the front and up the road again. But it's one thing to be able to get in the break day after day, but every time you do, you're using precious energy that you don't have to utilise the next day. And you see now, he's not able to keep up with the guys who are trying to go across. Van Avermaet, Voeckler, he can't follow them. Any other day you would have thought Alaphilippe will follow those guys. He's a winner of the Tour of California. He's performed well in the mountains, but it really does start to eat into those reserves, and you just don't have the same amount of energy at your disposal when you go so often.
Which can draw us to a conversation about the riders battling for the top 5, the top 10, or the podium, in fact, and trying to challenge Chris Froome. Everybody's been asking, when do the attacks come? They've got to attack, but you've got to economise with your energy. Because if you look at Van Avermaet and Alaphilippe fresh, Julian Alaphilippe is a better climber than Greg Van Avermaet. We've seen how much energy that Philippe has spent. He hasn't been able to recuperate. So when you look back to that top 10, and a lot of people have been saying, when are they going to attack Chris Froome? They haven't wasted energy to this point. They can't afford to, because these 4 days are enormous.
And they're going to attack when they think the moment has come that they can take it all the way. It's no good going out on an audacious attack and then being like a car running out of fuel, stranded on the side of the road. The bunch comes back past and you've blown yourself up. So the riders, they know themselves very well from training, from using the power meters, going on their heart rates. But at this end of a Grand Tour, it's all about feeling. And someone needs to take the risk of running out of gas, losing everything they've got at the moment, a top 10 place or a top 5 place on GC. Risk, see that going out the window to try and move higher. A 4th or 5th place overall, yes, it's good, it's a good performance, but nobody's going to remember it except your family. Get out and have a go.
And Richie Porte is one of the names that comes up in this conversation. Richie Porte is in 7th position, 4 minutes and 27 seconds down. But his legs have shown that he's good enough for 3rd. He's good enough to be on the podium. It's just that puncher that he had on stage 2. He's made the point that the final 3 kilometres today seem to go forever. Therefore, I'm not expecting Richie to move until we're inside the last 3 Ks today.
Well, you've got to go at a point, like I said, that you know you can go all the way to the finish, full gas, not run out and start to give that time back. And I agree with Richie. This climb seems to go on forever, and I did it in the car. As I was driving up, both climbs, in fact, they're separated by a technical, steep, fast descent. It'll be over in no time, that descent. So it'll seem like one big climb today, but it's steep enough to really make the differences. There's no sitting on. There's going to be no slipstream on this climb. It's incredibly hot as well, 35 degrees. This will be a race of attrition. Even without guys attacking, there'll be guys getting dropped, and he who can attack is the man who will move up a lot. And I reckon we can see Richie get himself up towards top 3, maybe top 4 by the end of today. Day before we rode into Bern and the riders looked forward to a rest day, everybody on the limit. Everybody was on the limit, but there was still a bit of margin there. Even Chris Froome threw out that fake attack, and Romain Bardet, he was the only one who really dared to do something, tried to get onto that descent by himself to try and steal some time. He can really throw it down a hill, but they caught him right before the top.
He is a joy to watch go downhill. The Movistar team, they wear the yellow helmets as the leaders of the team's classification. They've got the yellow numbers on as well. In 2nd place is Team Sky. But Sky won't be concerned about the team's classification because they've got the yellow that they really want. Gorka Izagirre crashed out today, broken collarbone, no longer here. Jesus Herrada, who won a stage at the recent Criterium du Dauphiné, is no longer here. That weakens Movistar in the mountains significantly. How do you think it will change the strategy for Valverde and Quintana?
I don't think it will weaken Movistar as a team in the mountains. If you're not defending yellow, I feel from this point on in the tour, it doesn't matter how many teammates you've got around you because it becomes so mountainous. Because in just a few kilometres, this race goes up. And it's all mountains all the way to the second last day. So having teammates, there's not really much they can do for you uphill. The Team Sky riders, yes, they set the pace, control the peloton. Chris Froome can relax behind the Sky team and just follow along. But going uphill, there's not a slipstream you can sit in. There's not so much of a chase you can do. It's going to come down to who can follow and then who can attack on top of that.
Be handy, though, to have Wout Poels.
He can neutralise attacks for Chris Froome, but the thing is that Froome still has to do the pedalling. He has to put out the wattage to close the gap as well. That's the problem. It's not like sitting on the flat and sitting in the slipstream. If you have a guy like Poels closing the gap, you have to at least be able to follow him. And if you blow up, teammate, schmeemate.
Yeah, if you can't do the job, it doesn't matter how good your team is. Breakaway group of 11 with an advantage of almost 11 minutes. Domenico Pozzovivo from AG2R Le Mondial is just tagged onto the back. They had good news, Robbie, on the rest day. The sponsor has extended yet again. They've been in the peloton for a long time now, AG2R Le Mondial. They've confirmed that they'll be on board at the minimum to the end of 2020. Lutsenko and Van Avermaet charging down as Thomas Voeckler, I wonder what face he's pulling at this point.
Eyes wide shut.
This is Lusada, Pals and Alaphilippe.
And for my money, these three are going a lot slower than the three in front of them. And doesn't look like the trio of Van Avermaet, etc., are making much ground on that front group. I'd like to get a shot of Peter Sagan right at the moment. Sure, he's tucked down on top of that top tube. Raphael Maker right behind him. Sagan's task from now, one, will be to hold that gap for Raphael Maker, get him to the bottom of that climb that Maker can try and get more points and try and win the stage, and for Sagan to take the points at the intermediate sprint, and that'll be a successful day for Peter Sagan.
And he's already got himself in a position to do so. They're over the first two climbs, descend, Valley Road, intermediate sprint, 20 more points for Peter Sagan, and then it is almost all uphill the final 33 kilometres to the finish. There's just a short 5-7 kilometre descent there in the middle. Shane Archbold in his first Tour de France, Robbie, holding on to the back. He's ridden well.
It's going to be a pretty good day out as far as mountain stages go for Shane Archbold and all the other sprinters who traditionally struggle in the mountains and have the enemy of the time limit, get over those first Cat 3s, and then they get a free ride to the foot of the climb. Of course, they have to ride up, and it's going to be tough, but they should have no problem at all with the time limit today. But there is that little thing of the 11-minute gap to the front, and a guy like Raphael Maker, so they'll be starting 11 minutes behind, so that it shrinks the time gap effectively for them, so they're going to have to ride pretty hard still.
He's got some pedigree, Dan Martin, as we take in the scenery of Switzerland. It's been a wonderful 48 hours or so through Switzerland, up now into the Alps, and just enjoying the backdrop. Throughout the tour, particularly as we head down through the Loire, that sort of region, we talk a lot about the chateaus. But man-made items cannot compete with Mother Nature at her very best. And today, Robbie, she's showing off.
Oh, she is indeed. And this is Le Mont d'Or, Gold Mountain. And the scenery around, I was going to say this part of Switzerland, but any part of Switzerland. I drive along going towards the stage finishes, and I'm in awe. I've got out on the bike a couple of days as well. Just beautiful to ride. I stuck to the flatlands, riding around the lakes.
The lakes were wonderful. Had the opportunity on the rest day yesterday to go for a swim. You heard the wheels of the cars screeching through the corners. Van Avermaet and Lutsenko have made contact. Thomas Voeckler is not quite there. Just briefly back to Dan Martin. He's got some pedigree. His uncle is Stephen Roche, who won the Tour de France in 1987. Stephen Roche, his sister, is the mother of Dan Martin. And Dan's father, Neil, was the British National Road Champion. So as a racehorse, he would have been expensive to buy. And Thomas Voeckler is not a bad descender, but do you remember that moment in 2011 into Pinerolo, descending a really tricky descent, and he thought, I'm in yellow, Contador, the likes of Schleck and Cadel Evans, they can take time on me on the way up. I'll take a few risks on the way down. And he went off the road into somebody's driveway and almost picked himself up a cup of coffee.
He went off the road not once, but twice on that descent. Full risk to hold the jersey that day, and he's taken the risks to get on and now onto that group. The question is, how much energy have those guys spent in the chase to join the breakaway in the front of the race? As we look at Le Lac de Langren.
This was formed in 1960 as a result of a dam that was built here, but it is fed by the snow melting water, and also got some water pumped into it from Lake Geneva. You can go for a swim here, and there's two arches. We get a chance to take a look at one of them. One of them stands at 95 metres tall, the other one 123 metres tall. Another one of the beautiful lakes. And the water yesterday in the lake that I had the chance to go for a swim in was surprisingly warm. I jumped in nervously.
Were you so nervous that you made the water warm? Is that what you're saying, Matthew?
Not quite. Not quite.
Beautifully fresh in those lakes. We also got in for a swim yesterday. I managed to get in a lap of the Bielersee, the Lake of Biel, 35, 37 kilometres around. Had a barbecue, a swim, and then I did another lap in the opposite direction. Fantastic rest day. Also, the quick step riders, they enjoyed a swim on their rest day. Did some bridge jumping in Bern into the flowing river. As soon as you jump in, you're 50 metres from the bridge you jumped off, and then swam to the bank and then went back to their bikes.
Looked fun. Van Avermaet in red. He's made contact. So too has Lutsenko and Thomas Voeckler. They now make this a leading group of 14 riders. It's been a good race for Greg Van Avermaet and for BMC. Well, Greg Van Avermaet, he can't do a lot to support Richie Porte once we get into the mountains, the last couple of climbs today. But it's good for their morale to have Greg Van Avermaet in the breakaway, surely.
It's good for the team to have a rider and have some representation in that breakaway. Greg Van Avermaet, he's also pretty much got one speed when he races, and that's flat out. If there's a race on, he'll race it. He finds it very hard to just sit back. Because also at this time gap now of 11.5 minutes, same goes for Van Avermaet as for the riders from Astana. Not much they can do for a teammate in this position, because if they get caught, when they get caught, it's going to be on the steepest part of this final climb, and their team leaders will go past them so quick it'll almost be a blur.
The group with Julian Alaphilippe is now drifting out at almost 2 minutes behind. Brice Filou has managed to get himself into the breakaway. He had fond memories when we went to Andorra. That's the only race he's won. A mountaintop finish, almost the Queen stage of that year's Tour de France, on debut, and he managed to win with his brother there to enjoy it with him.
Maybe all of their budget went towards paying their salaries. There was nothing left to get a hire car.
Well, the rest of the team, they came up here in the car and they were really smiling at lunch. They thought it was hilarious. The peloton moving along pretty quickly now as they go along the Valley Road. I'm sure that Luke Rowe and Ian Stannard will pick up the tempo, because that's the last part of the course where they can really help Chris Froome. And although they're not too worried about that breakaway group, they just don't want to let it go out to a silly sort of a margin.
And that thing that I was saying earlier about it won't matter as much having teammates in the mountains, unless, of course, you are the leader. And we've seen Team Sky on a number of occasions ride a little bit slower uphill at the pace set by Stannard and Rowe to keep them on board to ride in the valleys. That's where it's really important for a team leader, the guy leading the race, to have teammates to do that sort of work. But if you're a Quintana or a Richie Porte not leading the race, well, everybody's just sitting in the line along those valleys. It makes no difference to them, because once the race goes uphill, starts to split and they're on their own, them against Chris Froome. That's the point I'm making.
Two riders from IM Cycling in the breakaway. One of them is Stef Clement, the Dutchman that rides for the Swiss team, and he knows these roads very well. He was here in 2006 riding the Tour de l'Avenir, which is the race of the future, the crystal ball towards the Tour de France, a race that Nairo Quintana has won in the past. So, given that he's won here before, we thought it best to catch up with Stef Clement before the stage got underway. Here he is, talking before the stage, and now he's in the breakaway.
It was an uphill time trial, and most of the time you take a normal bike. I did it in the morning with my teammate Mathieu Sprick, and then I decided to take the time trial bike, and in the end I win, I guess, with 4 seconds, so the winner is always right. I said last week that I will try every day, so I will again. Of course, the finish line today is I think 8 kilometers further up the hill than it was back in 2006. But we'll try and we'll see, but memories are forever, and today is, we'll see what it brings.
You know, it's going to be a long, tough climb when we hear it's 8 kilometres further up the road today than what it was in 2006. Race Radio just talking about a crash, and it's Shane Archbold from Bora Argon 18, who we was talking about earlier on about how well he's been surviving the climbs. That is going to make life so tough for a guy that's not a natural climber. Let's hope that Shane's okay. He can get back on, get through the day, survive inside the time delay. But Robbie, you're not the one on the ground, yet you're still grimacing. You know what it feels like.
It's such a horrible feeling when you go down at speed. And on the upside, he's already on his feet. That's a good thing. You want to see the rider up and about, but he looks like he's in terrible pain because that is a very fast part of the course on that descent. So hopefully Shane Archibald is able to jump back on and continue. He's a tough man, and it's going to take every bit of toughness to get back on and get through this stage. A shame to see that happen.
He is coffin nails tough, Shane Archibald. I've seen him crash on the track riding Omniums, pick himself back up and finish the race with skin just hanging off his body, but he presses on. Breakaway group once again. Greg Van Avermaet from BMC. Thomas Voeckler, the man who can never be accused of being two-faced. He's got around about 100. This is Jurasek from Lamprey. He looks fairly comfortable. Brice Filou from Fortunato Vital Concepts. Domenico Pozzovivo. First time in the Tour de France, it's hard to believe. He's won mountain stages at the Giro d'Italia. Steph Clement just going through, the rider that we heard from before. Well, the peloton really is moving as they make their way down. And look, the vineyards. This is what I was talking about earlier on. It makes you a fraction thirsty for a crisp white wine as you drive through here. Well, Peter Sagan has got himself into the break. And he won the stage into Bern, where a lot of the Swiss wanted to pay homage to Fabian Cancellara. And Sagan told the story about his first Tour de France. And he was in the breakaway with Fabian Cancellara, who was wearing the yellow jersey at the time, having won the prologue in Liège. And when they were in the breakaway together, Peter Sagan said to Fabian Cancellara, "I want to beat you and win a stage of the Tour de France." He told him directly. And he thinks that at that time, Fabian Cancellara was a little bit angry with him. Who's this upstart? Now they've got a great relationship together, and Peter Sagan made it pretty clear he wanted to beat him because of his respect for him, and maybe he didn't get the finesse of the message quite right with his English, which is his third language. He speaks very well now, but was only just learning at that point.
Well, lots of shouts of encouragement there for Majka. He's become very popular, and well, there's a move there. There's an acceleration coming from the front, and that is Tony Galopin, Frenchman on Team Lotto, and there's no reaction at all there. He was at the front, he could feel the tempo, and he could feel the work that was happening, and he goes straight out on the attack. Galopin, well, if he wants to get himself something out of this stage, he needs to build up a big advantage before we start the final climb of the day, because Jarlinson Pantano is an extreme. There's another move now. This is the moment when they've started to say, okay, well, we've all been friends so far, and now's the moment when we really need to go out on the attack. That looked like Lutsenko made the move there, number 26 from Astana. He's got a teammate in the back, Tanel Kangat, and there's no response there. Well, you know, we're looking at 27 kilometres to go. Tony Galopin, he hasn't actually had a win since last year when he won a small criterium or an exhibition race in Calais. And before that, his last victory was way back in Paris-Nice in March 2015.
Roberto, it is Alexis Lutsenko who's coming across there at the moment, and Tony Galopin will welcome the extra help, I think, because it's still only 17 miles or 27 kilometres of racing left, but apart from the short descent to get onto the last climb, it's all uphill now. Well, you know, just look at this, Paul. These are beautiful structures. There's lots of these in Switzerland because it's such a hilly country, and they've managed to tame nature with these wonderful viaducts here.
Well, some serious engineering in this part of the world, whether it's the incredible viaducts we see or whether it's the tunnels. But the main field now there, you see, Phil, that little roundabout, that is the start of the climb. And in fact, I was hearing over race radio that Trek Segafredo and, of course, Movistar have come to the front to really lay it down. But look at that. The white jerseys of Trek Segafredo in the second row there, waiting to try and launch their man, Bauke Mollema, into a good position.
This is the way it had to be today. The two riders, Bauke Mollema for Trek and Nairo Quintana, they've got to come up here now. We should also look out for the white jersey as well of Adam Yates on the Orica Bike Exchange team. already riders slipping off the back of the race. This is just a long, steady slog over the plains of the vineyards, the Col de la Fourclap. Then we get the descent. Then we'll turn to the right. I hope they turn to the right because they come down so quick to this right turn. And then they start the climb up. Well, they continue to descent for a little bit longer.
Well, yeah, the climb is not very, the descent is not very long, maybe 4 or 5 kilometres. Then there's a very sharp turn to the right-hand side, and that's when the final climb of the day starts. I would say forget about clamps and things to get up the mountain today. Maybe the best thing would be to have a parachute on the back because there's a certain amount of paragliding. These two riders are now starting to build up quite an advantage. They've got about 20 to 25 seconds and there's been no response at all from any of the other riders. I get the feeling that Rafał Majka is biding his time as he did on the other day when we went down to Culoz, and so too is Pantano. Pantano there moving up into 3rd position in the white jersey.
Well, there's Rui Costa, I think it is, and he is in trouble at the back of the peloton right now. A lot of this whole group has been detached here. Steve Cummings is here as well, the British rider. And I'm hearing that I think it's Samuel Dumoulin has been distanced there, not Tom. But I'm not sure because they're not showing the distinction.
Well, this first part of the climb will be a sorting out process. In fact, you can already start to see just at the front of that line a small nucleus of riders forming. What you'll have is 10 or 15 riders at the back trying to hold on to position.
Well, in fact, that's John Degenkolb. All the sprinters in this group now, they've gone, they're done for the day. Just their job to get home now. They won't worry about the race that's still to come. These are the two leaders. Alexis Lutsenko is the rider at the back, former under-23 road race champion, and in front of him, as we still have 7.8 kilometres, nearly 5 miles to climb to the top of this goal. Tony Galopin, though, he could handle this.
Well, I think he needs to get himself a little bit of a start before he starts this final climb of the day, because this climb, I mean, it really is a beast. Driving up it this morning, it almost took your breath away. Number 8 there, just slipping away. That's big old Ian Stannard. His job done on the flat part of the stage. Also slipping away, Luke Rowe. He's one of the flat men, the important riders on the flat part of any stage for Team Sky. Now they're handing it over to Messieurs les Grimpeurs, as they say in French, the climbers on Team Sky.
Well, the lifting of the pace is basically done by a team at Movistar at the moment. There they are at the front and driving as well as they continue to pile up the front. Winner Anaconda as we go up around the vineyards again. This really lifting the tempo now. It's come on the climb before the finish climb. That's what they have to do.
Indication today is to see just how that man there wearing number 11 is going. Has he been playing a poker game? Has he got the form? He's talked throughout the whole of the build-up to the Tour de France about these next 4 days.
Well, Astana, who really haven't got a leader right now, but they're keeping a lot of men up on that leaderboard, and Nibali said that he doesn't want to win, but they need to lift Fabio Aru a little bit higher up.
Well, I think, Phil, anybody in this race who's been careful with their energy through the first 2 weeks of this race, they're going to benefit from these last 4 days in the Alps, because if you're feeling fresh, you could pull back 30 seconds to a minute every day over the next 4 days, and that could completely change the look of the overall classification.
Tanon Kangart coming back from the chase group there towards the peloton. He's been picked up. Flag of Wales on the corner there. And a change of jersey for Peter Sagan because he's happy now just to ride home today. Well, consolidated in that green jersey.
It just gives you an idea of...
He's got to get his radio sorted out.
It just gives you an idea of how powerful this man can be. Let's not forget, Phil, he's riding up a first category climber, changing his attire. I would suggest that he's probably taken off his undervest, which he had on earlier on, because over the next part of this race, he's going to get very, very warm.
Happy days for Peter Sagan. There's the glacier running off the side of Mont Blanc there, and it's called, well, it was briefly called up, but I think it is actually the glacier that's outside our hotel window.
Well, this is the glacier of Argentière, which is just on the other side of Chamonix. You can just see it there. They're magnificent, these glaciers, and plenty of people. I was surprised and amazed at how many people came through Chamonix. A town of only 10,000 people gets 100,000 visitors a day.
Well, it's a lovely place. It's nestling in the heart of the Alps here, and you're only a matter of 20 kilometres from the Swiss frontier as well. Lutsenko continues to try and pave a lonely trail. keeps looking up, hoping he'll see the summit, but there's more riders coming to join him.
Well, the rider on the front all of the time has never asked for any assistance at all is Steph Clement. That's him there, just sitting on the front of this group. Thomas Vogler in second position. Steve Morabito lives 30 kilometres away, Phil, from the race circuit today, so you could say that he's the regional of the stage. And Majka in the white polka dot jersey there, he looked to be having a little bit of a difficult time in the early slopes, but very often in the early kilometres of a climb he always seems to be in difficulty, and as we get further up the climb he seems to recover and find his own rhythm.
Little more acceleration here. This is a fine piece of pedaling by Lee Howard here as he comes up behind. 20 kilometres to go as we see the riders coming up here. Let's check in with Jens Voigt. Jens.
As we can see, Steph Clement doing all the work in the front here, right there. He's doing it for his teammate, and he won a stage 3 days ago, so he is ready to repeat that win. So I believe he is doing everything he can to keep in control. There we see number 79. He's just sitting there waiting for his day, for his moment to attack. And I would be surprised if he is not looking good today and not trying to go for another stage win.
Well, we'll see. I mentioned Lee Howard there because I really meant his teammate, Steph Clement. Here comes Rafał Majka, seeing the sign.
I wonder if Thomas Vogler is going to try and out-sprint him as he did a couple of days ago, and
Vogler just annoys his riders. No, this time he won't. So Rafał Majka gets the points over the top of the 4 class, 10 points I think it is, and he's won all the points available so far today. If he wins the stage he gets a massive 50 points, because when an all category race ends the day they double the points in the mountains. Now Alaphilippe coming back from the chase group he was in.
now all of a sudden I'm just trying to peek around the not any more Movistar riders doing the pacemaking. No, Vincenzo Nibali in earnest is doing the pacemaking, but we look down the line, there is number 11 just sitting around there, Peter Sagan. Well, job done for him. He's got his 20 points out on the course. Vincenzo Nibali doing an excellent job here, but he's not riding for himself, not riding for his own account here. He's trying to nurse his young prodigy Fabio Aru to the front end of the race, but there's not very many riders left in this group when you look to the back. No. But I can still see the white jersey over on the left hand side there of Adam Yates, and in front of him that little bobbing style there, that's the Irish rider Dan Martin.
This is Pozzovivo here. No, it's not, it's Vilmoraz who's coming off the back of the peloton as well from AG2R. Pierre Roland just in front from Cannondale Drapac. These riders' days are done. Emmanuel Buchmann hasn't really ridden so well this year. He came to the Tour and as German champion. He's dropping back. There's only one rider with him now, Quintana, and that is Valverde. He's got no other helpers up there.
And Valverde has turned out to be an amazing ally over these last few days. The Olympic Games, but also trying to help Nairo Quintana do better than second position. Just on the back there with that red jersey, Alain Philippe. He's seen the ups and downs of the Tour de France, but at least he's got that red number on his back as the most aggressive rider from the other day when we went down into Bern.
I think he's got Viti. I just caught a glimpse of his wingman, Emmanuel Viti, also there, but a little bit further down the line, I'm afraid. Stand by for the dizzy descent here as we race down to the foot of the final climb. Steph Clement knows these roads well.
Just having a look at the attack going forward there, Phil. This is Steph Clement on the back of the group, and I would not be surprised if that wasn't Jarlinson Pantano who made the move on the descent, and with the man who he beat to the finish in Culos just the other day, and that of course Rafał Majka.
Well, just gone under 15 kilometres to go, and it could be a case of deja vu for these two riders when we start the last climb.
So here we've got the riders who finished first and second on the stage into Culos, looking over his shoulder. Majka said, no, it's all up to you, mate, for the moment. I know how good you can sprint when it comes to the end of a race like this, and he's doing everything he can to stay in contact, but he has managed to get himself maximum points over the top of the climb. Over the Col de Forclaz, it was Majka, Vukla and Morabito. Vukla, normally himself an exceptionally good descender, he hasn't made the junction. These two riders now there is not too much. I've just noticed 3 kilometers to go to the start of the final climb, and it's just a shade inside of it. 11 kilometers of climbing up here to the heights in the Alps of 6,500 feet, just inside of 2,000 meters. Main field, well, they're an awful long way behind at 10¼ minutes. Very shortly, about 2 kilometers to go, they'll have that very sharp bend. This is Brice Felu just on the back. The other rider in there from AG2R, just trying to stay in contact there. That looks like it was Pozzo Vivo. Just and look at the speeds there. We get a chance here. 65 kilometers now, 75 kilometers now for the chasers, who are not much more than 300 meters behind.
Well, here we go, Paul, back on the road to Culoz. The same two riders holding off the peloton. I wouldn't bet against it either.
Well, the difference is, Phil, that was a downhill finish into the town of Culoz and a flat sprint over the final kilometre. Here, you have to get caught when you cross the finishing line, because the road continues to climb up to another 400 or 500 metres after the finishing line, so it is a serious uphill finish.
Peter Stettner here, just finding it a little bit rough at the moment. In front of him is Damiano Caruso on BMC. Dropping away from a very small main peloton now. Here it is. Let's go and have a look in there. Sat at the back now, ready. I'm a bit surprised it's Geraint Thomas. He looks like being the next to go off.
That's an indication he's not too comfortable there, but to just look how many riders are left for Team Sky. The only way, I think, to put Chris Froome into any difficulty is to try and isolate him on this final part of the climb. Further on, as you said, we've got two races going on today, the race for the victory. I just think that Jarlinson Pantano is a slightly better climber than Rafał Majka. Majka's done a great job so far. They're about 1 kilometre away from that right. Well, here it is. There's the right-hand bend.
Whoa, let's watch this. Oh, our cameras are cut away. Oh, now we go.
The reason they cut away, Phil, was because Geraint Thomas has been left behind by that group, and now he's obviously paying for all of the work he's done in the early part of the event.
Well, he's got a long slog up to the finish today. The first two are around that corner, but they're now going downhill pretty quickly. Well, I did tell you about this case of being deja vu with those two riders out across these very Alps, and it was a very, very cheeky sprint win for Jarlinson Pantano. A big win it was, Paul, for his team IAM too. They needed that. They'd never won a stage of the Tour de France.
Nope, and they got that first victory under their belt, but it's a completely different finish. I remember this from driving up this morning. A beautiful entrance into that tunnel, which was completely decorated with bicycles painted up in red and white. And those are the colours, by the way, of this region of Switzerland.
Just gone past the banner, 10.4 kilometres to the summit of this last climb of the day. It's outside category. It is a rough one. I can tell you a little bit about it. It's the climb of the Émotion, 10.4 kilometres over 6,400 feet. The steepest part on the climb, Paul, is 15.6%.
It's horrible. It is an awful climb. HC, by the way, stands for hors category, which means outside categorization. 10 kilometres to go, and there is no respite from here to the finish line.
It starts a little, should we say, a little bit gently. It looks quite normal here. It's just an alpine pass, but wait, this is a toughie, and there's a lot of people here as well. Vincenzo Nibali also looking a bit concerned about the way that break is thinning out, the bunch is thinning out. The yellow jersey still has 3 riders with him. Quintana's trying to get on the back wheel of Chris Froome.
Well, Nibali obviously in a very good day. Chris Froome is being followed by Bauke Mollema, who is in second place in the overall. And I wonder if he's looked back at history to remind himself of just what happened to him a couple of years ago when he was in a position like this, second overall coming out of the rest day. Now that looks like the rider from Katusha, Zakharin, making the move in the red jersey.
Well, he's the rider that's up in the breakaway. and he doesn't know if he's going to the Olympic Games yet because of all the politics surrounding selection of athletes from Russia for the Rio Games. He's been selected by his country.
Steph Clement now 72. He did a lot to lay the foundations for the attack for Jarlinson Pantano. Puts a lot of pressure onto the shoulders of his teammate. The next acceleration comes from the local rider there, because that's Steve Morabito in the red, white and blue jersey, FDJ, as I said, the number. Oh, Bryce Fellou was about to make the move there, which was a bit of a surprise.
Well, there he is, Bryce Fellou. He's never won a race since he conquered Arcalis a few years ago now. This breakaway has been completely spread eagle. Thomas Voeckler had a long chase to join the breakaway. He got up there too far, this right into the distance. We start hairpinning shortly. There are 6 hairpin bends on the climb up to the finish line, and it finishes going uphill, by the way.
Yes, well, after about 4 kilometers of climbing, the easiest gradient is in the first part of the climb. It's around about 6 and 7%, but once you get to 4 kilometers into the climb, then it climbs up to the 9% gradients, and there's only one moment of respite at around about 4 kilometers to go when it gets as easy as 8.5%, but for the rest, it is a very difficult climb. And there's a gradient in the last kilometre of around about 12%, so it really does get quite infernal in the last part of the race. Still no moves in the yellow jersey group. They've just come inside of the 10-minute mark, as we still see and still wait for the moves to come from the... And now this is a little bit of an acceleration. Vincenzo Nibali says, right, now we're going to start to lift the pace. Fabio Aru comes across there, but Sky respond to that move quite easily. There they can see the... indication of the 10.5 kilometre point to the summit. Well, there is the Mont Blanc. We've been all the way around these Alps. It has been so clear over these last few days. It is the highest point in Europe. As you can see from there, it is exceptionally high, and it climbs up to, I think the summit of Mont Blanc is pretty close to 15 or 16,000 feet when you do the translation. That's 4,800 metres. You'd be grasping for oxygen up there, Phil.
Well, unfortunately, there's no road, so that's good for me. We're going up to 1,960 metres now, and it's the finish right on the top. It's the highest finishing line of the race this year. And these
are saying they've only got between 5 and 10 seconds advantage over the chasers. So yes, they have to collaborate. And I suppose the interesting thing is that they've been in a breakaway situation like this. And the strange thing is that on that occasion, it was in fact Majka who put Jarlinson Pantano into difficulty on the climb. In fact, they've been caught there. Zakharin has come back from nowhere. 1:49 now, so 3 riders with another rider in pursuit, and that's Bryce Fellou of France.
Well, you know, Zakharin here has come back, and he's really throwing a message out to the Olympic Games. He's been selected by Russia, but he doesn't know if Russia's going to the Games yet. And he's got great form, that's for sure, and the course would suit him. Steph Clement, number 72 there. These boys are riding quite sensibly at the moment, because this climb still has 8 kilometres to go, and it gets steeper.
Well,
the finish of the stage, Fano et Mousson. We turn short of the French border, French-Swiss border, by about 2 kilometres. But now returning back into the heart of Switzerland here.
Well, this is the main field. The yellow jersey group are now starting the final kilometres of the descent. Very shortly they'll take that right-hand bend, Phil, and start the final climb of the day. They're doing speeds here, as you can see, around about almost 80 kilometres an hour, 50 miles an hour. And obviously Fabio Aru has seen this as a day that is important for him to move up and improve on his 10th position in the overall standings. He will move up a place tonight at least, because TJ Van Garderen, the American from Team BMC, well, he's been left behind, and he's going to lose huge chunks of time on a climb like this.
21 riders left in the main chase peloton. A little bit of cramp creeping in there by the look of it. That rider is actually Markel Irizar, I think. Irizar at cramping up. He's still at the back of the yellow jersey group there.
Zubeldia, no stranger to finishing in the top positions in the Tour de France, but here he's just going to try and hang on for as long as possible because he realises how important it is for Bauke Mollema to have a teammate up alongside him, because when this race starts to split up, it's important to have a teammate there in case you have a mechanical problem or need somebody to pace you over, so just to get you back into the race.
The snows on the north side never melt completely throughout the summer.
So we're now looking at three leaders. Zakarin, the rider we're just looking at there in third position, rode across the gap. He was expected to be a top man in the Giro d'Italia, but a crash out of the Giro d'Italia forced him to change his plans for the Olympic Games. And so not very long after he had that nasty crash in the Giro d'Italia, he was on the rollers. He was getting himself ready to train back up for this race. The team put him into this race to try and use the Tour de France as preparation for the Olympic Games, which is now for all of the Russian athletes. But he needs to preparation. Looking down in the valleys, I mean, it is quite magnificent today. We're right on the edge of the Haute-Savoie, which is mountains, the High Savoie. This is the Italian side, and it really is one of those magical days there as we look at these live pictures of the race. Attacks at the front.
He's gone with 6.5 kilometres and the steepest part of the climb. He has accelerated just like he came across to the leaders. There is a reaction, but it's not coming from Rafał Majka. He has no more in those legs with that acceleration. It is Jarlinson Pantano.
Well, Pantano already has a stage for the man who wears the polka dot jersey. Phil, he's not one of the great climbers. He's great when it comes to getting into breakaway situations like this, but he just cannot respond to these kind of vicious accelerations. The change in pace on a climb is so difficult to respond to, but one man did, the Colombian rider Jarlinson Pantano. I don't think Zakarin there, Phil, expected him to come back.
Zakarin's only won one race this year, but he's been very, very consistent. He was fifth in the one-day classic, Liège-Bastogne-Liège. He finished fourth in Romandy, which is in Switzerland by Geneva. He's not very far away from Geneva. And he was fourth in Paris-Nice, where he won a stage of that race. Now then, I wonder what language they're speaking as he tries to speak to the Colombian. Well, whatever was said, and I suspect they spoke in English to each other. It looks as though they've decided to... And another acceleration. You know, he must have taken a look at the face of Pantano and thought, I'll try once more, and it's going to work for the moment.
Well, he's hit him very hard. Pantano now a bit losing metre by metre. He needs to get back into some form of rhythm with that. That was a very vicious acceleration coming from Zakarin.
Well, his only Grand Tour stage win ever was last year on the 11th day of the Tour of Italy, the Giro d'Italia. A man who does not know if he's going to the Olympic Games, but he has been selected. And they say the course suits him. I think we can see why now. It's very hilly. Zakarin totally committed. He's tried a number of moves this year in the Tour. None has worked out yet. The Basque flag is flying under the nose of Pantano. He's still an awful long way to go. He's made it very, very early, and there's room for Pantano to actually recover from this.
You can see written all over his face, Phil, the pain. He wants to win today. Maybe it's a bit more special for a Colombian to try and win today as well, because it's Colombian National Independence Day. And Nairo Quintana of Zakarin is going to be hard to pull back, while in the yellow jersey group, all of a sudden a race that's been dominated by Team Sky is being dominated by a different team. This is Vincenzo Nibali of Astana, not riding for himself, a former Tour de France winner, riding for his prodigy, and that of course is Fabio Aru, who's sitting right up there in third position in that line. Another interesting point was they didn't travel up here this morning. Many of them slept up here overnight to make sure that the job was done. Look at the face though here, Phil, on Jarlinson Pantano.
Now, is this a move here? Because
Valverde.
This is Valverde who's stretching the legs. He's come to the front. There'll be no move from Team Sky. It's up to the others to get the seconds back. They'll just let the pace slow down. They're not going to waste their energy today.
Well, actually, I just noticed now coming up alongside there, you can see a little bit of a gap starting to appear by Chris Froome. All of a sudden, his teammates might be ungluing him.
Watch Pantana here. Quintana, sorry, watch him. He must have seen that gap open. Why doesn't he attack? He can't.
Maybe he can't, and maybe he's waiting. It's a playing game at the moment, but towards the top of this climb, there will be some serious truths. I take my hat off, though, to the man over on the left-hand side there. He's one of the oldest men in the breakaway, Alejandro Valverde. Phil goes again.
Well, that's worth a try, because remember, the last week of the Tour de France last year was not... He lost half his lead in the last 2 days in the mountains. And
oh, Phil, look, all of a sudden, Froome again losing a little bit, as they see, and now dripping by.
Einaus there giving up the pacemaking. This is all on the effort from Alejandro Valverde here. Wout Poels is up behind him.
Roman Kreuziger cracks. That's Einaus with number 2 on his back. And I just wonder if Chris Froome went and looked at the videos last night about the last time he came up here in the Criterium de Dauphiné back in 2014. He was dropped and left behind by Alberto Contador on that occasion, and he lost his overall lead in the race.
And he lost to Contador by just 20 seconds. And the way this Tour is going, those seconds will count. He's going to hang on, but if Quintana has got anything in those legs, he's got to go. He's got to gain, even if it's only 20 seconds. Well, he's right on the wheel of Froome.
Yeah, Wout Poels and Nieve are sharing turns at the front. Froome just keeps looking down that gangly, ungainly style of his, and you just can't read how his body's going to react. Well, this man is reacting to the crowds now at 2 kilometres to go, and having driven this part of the course, Phil, we know that the barriers will start in about 400 metres time.
Just around that corner, he's inside 2 kilometres from the finish. Concentrating, hurting, he knows he's under 2, the feeling must be great. And they're not going to counter the move, they're more concerned about the yellow jersey.
Well, I'll tell you what, Phil, Sky at the moment are nursing Chris Froome. Richie Porte is sitting there in 5th position there, right on the wheel of Nairo Quintana. Quintana comes up alongside Froome just to have a look into his eyes, maybe, just to see how he can, if he can read.
Well, I must confess that I really think now that Richie Porte might make a stab. Number 91 down there, he's watching riders go.
They don't need to panic on the attack of Dan Martin. Dan Martin is 9th overall, but he's lost himself more than 5 minutes. So, again, I would think that Chris Froome will be waiting to see if he's going to get any moves coming from the riders closer to him. Now, watch out.
Aru. He looked to me as though he was getting a bit twitchy there on the right-hand side.
But even Aru is quite a long way back. Aru is actually behind Dan Martin at the start of the day in 10th place overall. But you will see a move come from Chris Froome if there's an attack coming from Bauke Mollema.
Well, here comes the Irishman now, looking over his shoulder there. He's got a gap, but he's still a long way from the finish. He's a lot more than 1.5 kilometres, of course.
Froome, I just keep wondering, Phil, he just seems to be having a hard time holding on to Alejandro Valverde's in difficulty there, as well as Tony Galopin, who's in the breakaway early on today in the red jersey. He's going backwards.
Well, it's going to become one-on-one now because Valverde's gone. Quintana can't do anything about Froome. Froome seems to be getting tired, but there's nobody can hit him. And Bauke Mollema, he's looking to profit by anybody else's mistakes. He's in the group, but he's done nothing. He's the white jersey in front of the white jersey.
Well, they've slowly clawed their way back now to the... Martin not showing any fear of the reputation of these men. This is the best Martin in the Tour de France, but currently he's going nowhere.
Sebastian Reidenbach slipping away off the back as well, and his name's on the wall just around the corner. 4 kilometres to go. This is for the chase, remember. The other boys will be looking for 1 kilometre to go. The other boy will be looking for 1 to go. Martin's made his move. He's been put back in his place. Quintana gives nothing away, and frankly does nothing right now.
I'm just
23 and 24 years old, those 2 young riders getting practice in the Tour de France. One day either one of them might be in the position to win this amazing race. 1 kilometre to go.
And on Colombian Independence Day, going to take 2nd place to add to his victory into Culoza just the other day. It's going to be Jarlinson Pantana. What a brilliant ride by this man. I tell you what, Switzerland seems to smile on him because...
Look at the average speed, 25 miles an hour with those 2 climbs. That's unreal.
It's unbelievable as we see Pantana. He's still not got quite up to the finishing line, but I was just about to say it was in the Tour of Switzerland we first saw how well this young man was riding when he won a stage there and finished in 2nd place in the overall standings.
Oh, the cars have been sent away, what they call the deviation, so now you're on your own to take the glory of the day. Jorgensen Pantano, second for Colombia, and for his professional team, IM Cycling, and they grab him before he falls. Now, I wonder if we haven't seen Micah on the climb at all. We haven't got enough cameras, but he should be next man up.
Yes,
Is the big ride here, because any second will do for Richie Porte. He needs to continue. He may not know the demise of his teammate, the American TJ Van Garderen, who I think is going to lose big time tonight. Another man dropped is Joaquin Rodriguez. A Tasmanian now trying to gain a few seconds, always believing a second or third place in Paris is very real.
Well, Richie Porte knows that this is important days for him as well, to try and climb onto the podium and make good the 1 minute and 40 seconds he lost on the second day of this Tour de France, not on his own fault, because of a flat tyre at the wrong possible time. That little acceleration came from Nairo Quintana, but he couldn't move. Now all you can see is Chris Froome keeping a little bit of an eye on everything else, and Fabio Aru makes the next acceleration, looking for a few seconds here or there.
He's looking for a few seconds because Daniel Martin's just been dropped from that group, and Aru could climb over him in the 14 seconds.
They're also saying that the man in second place overall, Bauke Mollema, is in difficulty. Froome has just gone over the top though now.
Now here's how you collect seconds, but Quintana looks, at least he's going to hold on to him. This isn't the Chris Froome of the last few days of the Tour de France. He tried, it didn't happen. He'll be worried about the progress of Richie Porte. He'll try to limit it to just a few seconds.
Well, you know what, Richie Porte knows Chris Froome extremely well, but again, Froome is having to rely on his friend and on his teammate Wout Poels, who's come back there once again. Well, Richie Porte really does have the legs and does have the condition to handle a 3-week bike race like this, but all of a sudden Wout Poels is dragging back Chris Froome, and in fact now there's a little bit of dateline between Froome and Quintana. Froome has seen this and said, right, I'm off. Any time I can grab anywhere on any of my adversaries, I'll do it.
He just closes his eyes, grits his teeth and goes. And Wout Poels looks over to see the face of Quintana, saying, well, there's your yellow jersey, Nairo, it's up to you. And he's come right up to Richie Porte here. Porte is gaining a little bit of time. You could see him up to 6th overall tonight. Won't be closing down any time at all on Richie Froome, on Chris Froome rather. 1 kilometre to go for those two.
Bardet is a little bit in difficulty too, number 41. Adam Yates and Louis Meintjes in this group, they're just coming up to the back wheel there of Nairo Quintana. Fabio Aru over on the right-hand side. These were the guys we expected to see the challenges come to Chris Froome from this afternoon, but they now are the riders on the back foot.
Well, Bardet needs to lose about 24 seconds to the man in red here to lose his place overall in the Tour for now. Froome again attacking no one, just following the wheels and keeping the tempo. It's hurting now. This isn't the smoothie Froome we saw in the Pyrenees.
500 metres to go, but let's not forget, Phil, tomorrow there's also a very important uphill time trial. As Quintana sees this, he realises he's in difficulty, he's losing time. In fact, that time was 800 metres to go. There's still a long way, around about 2 minutes to get to the finish line. Adam Yates is riding well in the white jersey, best young rider in this bike race there, number 209.
Adam Yates needs 59 seconds over Bauke Mollema, who has been dropped from this group, to reclaim his 2nd place overall in this race for Orica Bike Exchange. We've gone up again to Richie Porte here. He's kicked again. You wouldn't think the table are the best of friends. Chris stays in his house in Tasmania, but today it's different. This is the Tour de France.
Well, Froome has moved up onto the wheel of Porte, but look at the gap, look at the daylight now between them and everyone else. Nairo Quintana, Phil, tried once again to come across that gap, but he couldn't distance the other compatriot, the other adversaries in the group with him.
Porte is racing here to climb 1 place certainly, and maybe 2. I think it's a little impossible to climb 3, but he could be in the top 6 tonight.
Just look how much pain Fabio Aru is going through, number 21 there, just to stay on the line there, and Adam Yates accelerates. That's an amazing thing to see, because these riders are putting Nairo Quintana into difficulty.
He is racing to claim 2nd overall.
Bardet has gone straight over the top of that, the young rider from AG2R, but Adam Yates is still on his wheel, Louis Meintjes. These youngsters are putting Nairo Quintana, who's talked about the last week of the Tour for 3 months, into serious problems.
Richie Porte goes up towards the summit here, and he might well be climbing up 1 or 2 places. Bardet might be saving the day with that late attack. They all come out in the wash. As Port sees the finishing line, he looks over at Chris Froome. Don't think Chris is worried about beating Richie Port as long as he goes across the line in the same time, which he will. And they put distance again into Nairo Quintana. Personally, I find this a very, very sad sight because he's such a popular bike rider.
Well, we've talked so much about this last week of the Tour de France, these 4 big days in the Alps, but Richie Port is the man who's going to use those days, Phil, to try and get what he's aiming for. He's looking for a podium position.
I think the white jersey of Yates is just at the top of our picture as they come up to the line and they grab hold of those 2 riders. A good attack up the line by Port. Here's Yates, remains the best young rider. Lose a little bit to the leaders, but he might well find himself consolidating. He might even go over Bauke Mollema.
Yeah, Fabio Aru's the next rider in, Louis Meintjes, but the time, Phil, is what we're interested in. What is the time deficit of Nairo Quintana as he comes up to the line? He's going to lose himself, I guess, another 27 seconds, I made it there, on Chris Froome.
Well, that will open the gap up for Yates as Mollema comes up on the back wheel here.
And he's lost 38 seconds on the yellow jersey as well as Dan Martin starts to come in.
Well, he'll just about hold on to second place over Adam Yates with that.
Now coming up there is Sergio Henao. He's lost a bit of time. Let's not forget tomorrow is an uphill individual time trial. That says Joaquim Rodriguez about to come up towards the line in the red jersey. Well, at least he can celebrate this evening because it's his teammate, by the way, who's got the victory on the stage. Oh, this is a difficult climb. The riders have had to come up this afternoon, and it's the first day of 4 in these alpine passes as we look down on the beckoning waters there. This man tried to do everything for his teammate Nairo Quintana, Alejandro Valverde. He's lost a little bit of time a bit further up. That's Roman Kreuziger. He started the day well placed in the overall standings, in 11th place overall. Valverde, I wonder if he's laying the foundations here for an Olympic gold medal, because the Olympic Games road race is a very difficult circuit, and this man, not only is he good at long stage races like this, but he is also a very, very good one-day specialist, and that's what he's thinking about. That's what his mind is set upon here.
Well, there's winners and losers on every day of the Tour de France. Zakarin was a personal winner getting the stage, but the battle was reenacted 7 minutes, almost 8 minutes behind. And Richie Port gaining time, but he's not gaining time enough yet to get on to the podium in Paris. The winner today, undoubtedly, Chris Froome, and he showed us the strength of having a great team around him.
Zakarin, a great ride today, and rightly so, saying that it wasn't a big surprise. He's shown his qualities in the past. When he crashed out of the Giro d'Italia, in fact it was on stage 19 that he crashed out, so almost at the finish line, he was sitting in 5th position overall. And as Phil and Paul spoke about throughout the stage, he has been a former winner of the Tour of Romandy in Switzerland, a very mountainous race. He won a stage at Paris-Nice this year in a mountaintop finish ahead of Richie Port, Geraint Thomas and Alberto Contador. So it's no great surprise to see Ilnur Zakarin win the stage. Here's the overall classification. It's Froome, Mollema, Yates, Quintana, Bardet, Port. It's then Alejandro Valverde in 7th position. Fabio Aru has moved from 10th to 8th. Dan Martin has held on to 9th position. And Louis Meintjes has moved from 12th into the top 10. An individual time trial is a true test on any course, but when it's in the heart of the Alps, the examination of who is the strongest is even further amplified. The stunning backdrop, it's going to play second fiddle today, as there is so much at stake in the race for a position on the podium in Paris. Stage 18, and it may only be short, but it's difficult. It's the individual time trial starting in Solange, making its way through to Megève. It's 17 kilometres, and most of it is uphill. The first part of the course includes the climb that was used in the World Championships in 1980, and it is the steepest portion of today's stage, with gradients of 10%.
Voici Nicolas Hédé.
This is Nicolas Erday, one of the earlier starters. He's already made his way across the finish line, and he has the quickest time so far. The winner of the King of the Mountains classification from the Tour of Spain a few years ago has been quiet so far, but came out with a point to prove. He's registered a time of 32 minutes and 37 seconds, and that's the benchmark for the others to try and beat in the race for stage honours. Second fastest is Alexis Goujar. It is then Perrochon in third position. This is Nelson Oliveira, the Portuguese national champion, who in the opening individual time trial, he finished in third position. Just 1 minute and 31 seconds slower than Tom Dumoulin, but just on 30 seconds slower than Chris Froome. So the point for the King of the Mountains jersey, but he's 83 points behind. Today, Rafael Majka will be taking it easy to get in the break tomorrow. More points for the King of the Mountains. Tom Dumoulin, though, he's not taking it easy. Don't worry about 55 kilometres per hour. 70 plus. How about those apples? The fastest time for Tom Dumoulin.
There's only one rider left to finish this individual time trial today, and it's the man who wears the yellow jersey, Froome, getting into that strange position we saw him adopting to win a stage into Bagnères de Luchon in the Pyrenees, which seems like months ago right now, and he looks extremely comfortable on that machine of his as he clocks up to 1 kilometre to go, and at 29:41 I would think that this man is going to challenge that.
And 1 second for the last kilometre.
Well, that is just on 60 kilometres an hour he went through there. The average time of 20.6 miles an hour. Poor old Tom Dumoulin waited for an awful long time, but Chris Froome already knows that he's got the victory of the stage and extended his lead in the overall standings. Third place on the stage for Richie Porte. Well, fourth place, sorry, Fabio Aru in third, both at exactly the same time. Brilliant performance by Romain Bardet to get fifth, Jon Isagir in seventh. Louis Meintjes, the South African, in ninth place, 108 back, but that will keep him well in the top 10 in the overall standings. And Nairo Quintana, I think, improving a little bit down towards the end to get himself up there too.
In the general classification, Mollema has held on to second position, but he's now out to 3 minutes and 52 seconds behind. Yates has held on to third. In fact, the top six have not changed. It's then Nairo Quintana, Romain Bardet, Richie Porte, Fabio Aru, Alejandro Valverde. Louis Meintjes has climbed up to ninth position, and Dan Martin has slipped to 10th.